And one of the most difficult political issues we've seen, well, for years here has been, of course, the Murray-Darling Basin. The Murray-Darling Basin Plan was meant to solve all of that with an agreement on how much water should be returned to the environment, how much can be used for irrigation. But as we've seen in recent months, there's been a lot of contention about this, claims of water theft, claims of, well, problems in the original drafting of the plan, and claims that communities aren't being listened to either. Well, today, the Minister for Water, David Littleproud, has announced plans for a new Inspector General that will oversee this. Will be a tough cop on the beat. He has in principle support of the basin states. They're actually going to technically sit down on Sunday this weekend to formalise all of this. The Inspector General will have 10 staff, and the Inspector General, at least to begin with, in an acting capacity, will be Mick Keelty, former Federal Police Commissioner, who was recently appointed the Northern Basin Commissioner. That position will be abolished, and Mick Keelty most likely will become permanently the new Inspector General of the Murray-Darling. He will have sweeping powers, along with his team, to gather evidence, to compel evidence, even from individual farmers, as well as communities and others that are engaged in the Murray-Darling. That information, that evidence, can then be used for prosecution by state and federal authorities. I spoke to the Minister, David Littleproud, about how this is going to work and what difference it's going to make. Minister, thanks for your time this afternoon. What will this Inspector General do?
Well, I've asked the basin states to agree to this, and we'll hopefully tick it off on Sunday. But effectively, this is about maintaining confidence and integrity in the Basin Plan. This will be a tough cop on the beat to make sure that the Basin Plan is rolled out. There is also the opportunities as a statutory position to make sure that they can investigate and compel evidence to ensure that there's integrity in the plan, and then also not only of the MDBA and the Commonwealth, but also the states.
So what does that mean in practice? It'll have 10 staff. That's not many people, of course, to monitor the entire Murray-Darling Basin here, but will they go and do spot checks on how much water is being used by an individual farmer?
So this is an overarching. The states themselves have done a lot of work around increasing their compliance. This will make sure that their compliance monitoring is up to scratch, but also act as another conduit to the community, that if they want to come forward and speak to the Inspector General, they may, or their staff. And the intent is that these people will be up and down the basin. We don't want them tucked away in Canberra. We want them out there, because if we have that engagement, we will make sure that the integrity and confidence in this plan continues.
But again, in practice, does that mean one farmer can call up this Inspector General and its personnel and say, I think the bloke next door is doing the wrong thing? Is that how it works?
In essence, that can happen. And what the responsibility of the Inspector General is then to refer those to criminal agencies for investigation, or the departments that are responsible for that.
So your message to those farmers who may be doing the wrong thing is, watch out.
Look, I think most farmers do the right thing, but we have seen in any industry there is always a small element that tries to break the rules or cut corners. This is about making sure we compliment the states and the work that they've done. I've got to compliment them on what they have achieved. We've come a long way over the last 18 months in particular, but this is about making sure there's an overarching body that can give confidence between states, because what we have to do is also build trust between the states, and that's something that we've worked hard on over the last 18 months, and this just is the final piece of that puzzle.
The former Federal Police boss, Mick Keelty, is going to act in the role. He was just the other day, it feels like, appointed the Northern Basin Commissioner. What's the difference between that role and this new role?
Well, this will expand, so the Northern Basin Commissioner will no longer exist. And effectively this is going basin-wide. It was just confined...
But with similar powers?
Similar powers, but probably increased powers, I think, is a better way to put it. And the reality is I've asked Mr Keelty to be the interim. Obviously it's a cabinet appointment, but I would be encouraging Mr Keelty to consider his future very seriously, because I think we need an eminent Australian that has the confidence of the Australian people. And Mick Keelty has done an exceptional job in Northern Basin, where there has been some issues, and he's worked collaboratively with both Queensland and New South Wales in getting their act together. And that's why I think if we can bring somebody with expertise of that calibre, we continue to build confidence in the Basin Plan.
Is there any estimate how much is being lost to water theft at the moment?
No, there's not. I mean, we have to understand that there are some convictions that have taken place, and in fact there are some legal proceedings that are currently taking place. So there has been a regime since the states have ramped up their compliance, and as I say, they've done They've done a lot of heavy lifting in the recent years, but there's still more to do, but it's about making sure we get confidence between those states, because if we keep the confidence between the states, the delivery of the plan is more likely to happen. We've stopped the yelling and screaming. We've taken the politics out of this. It's now about leadership, and it's about making sure that people understand that this is about supporting those communities up and down the basin.
And by doing this, is the message also to critics, including in those states, that the plan is not changing?
The plan's not changing. There are fringe dwellers that want to tear this down. Let me tell you, we have done the heavy lifting. We've got the legislation through the Northern Basin Review, Sustainable Diversion Limit. We've got an agreement on the social and economic test of the 450, which is akin to getting peace in the Middle East. The reality is now it's about delivery. We are at the pointy end of that, and we are going to spend a lot of money about making sure those efficiency measures get through, and then needs to make sure there are checks and balances not only by the state, but by the Commonwealth, and giving the confidence to the taxpayer and those people that are impacted that this plan is being done properly.
Final one, you also had a bit of a slapdown today at those continuing to advocate for the Bradfield scheme, which has been around for forever in Australia as an idea, diverting water from the north down south. What's your problem with it?
Well, the Bradfield scheme, as it was proposed in 1938, has been proven in 1944 that it doesn't work. What I'm saying is, don't talk about that as the signature scheme. We've got to back ourselves. I back us to build new water infrastructure. Iterations of the Bradfield scheme, yes. We've got to start digging some holes, and digging some holes particularly in Northern Australia. But you've also got to remember, Northern Australia needs to be developed as well, and how we get that water down, there are more efficient and more advanced ways of moving water from the north
this
into
is
lower parts.
just too costly.
Well, exactly, in terms of what it would return. But we shouldn't say we shouldn't start looking at new ways to develop it. But until we start digging some holes up north, let me tell you, it's a moot point. But Northern Australia needs a crack at it first. We've also got to take into account biosecurity risks, because once you start moving water from the north to the south, you've got to understand you're going to be moving pests as well. That's not insurmountable. Make no mistake, that's not insurmountable. But the further you have to take that water, the greater the evaporation, the less efficient it is. But we shouldn't say why we can't do things. We've got to look for ways to how to do them. And I'm not saying let's shut up the shutters and not do anything in terms of water infrastructure. Let's do it smart. Let's forget about these old schemes, because all they do is muddy the water, because you get those that say it's just infeasible, and then it muddies the water about us actually moving ahead with a proper debate and a proper plan.